Hello and welcome. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh and this is Voice of the Global South. All right then, let's get started on the show this week. After mother of all deals with the EU, much anticipated India-US trade deal gets a green signal. From mourners to fighters, Baloch women becoming new symbols of resistance. And former Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi's son shot dead at home. The United States and India have announced a major breakthrough in trade relations, marking significant rollback of tariffs and deepening of economic cooperation between the two countries. On February 2nd, US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi reached the agreement during a phone call. Shortly after, President Trump announced on social media that United States would reduce tariffs on Indian goods to 18%. Prime Minister Narendra Modi confirmed the tariffs reduction, stating that Made in India products would now face an 18% duty in the US market. He described the agreement as a win for both nations, saying that when the world's largest democracies work together, it unlocks immense opportunities for mutually beneficial growth. Addressing Parliament on February 5th during motion of thanks to the President's address, Prime Minister Modi said India has emerged as a trusted global partner.
बड़े-बड़े देश भारत के साथ व्यापारिक संबंध बनाने के लिए बहुत ही आतुर है। यूरोपीय संघ का ट्रेड डील हो, अमेरिका के साथ अभी अभी हुआ जो ट्रेड डील हो, और कल हमारे पीयूष जी ने सदन में विस्तृत जानकारी भी दी है और पूरा विश्व खुल करके इस ट्रेड डील का तारीफ कर रहा है। और उसमें जब यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ ट्रेड डील हुआ तो विश्व को एक भरोसा हुआ कि अब वैश्विक स्तर पर स्थिरता की संभावना बढ़ेगी। अमेरिका के साथ ट्रेड डील होने के बाद विश्व को और भरोसा हो गया कि जो स्थिरता की एहसास हो रहा था अब गति का भी एहसास होने लगा है। अब विश्व के लिए शुभ संकेत।
Prime Minister Modi pointed to a series of recent trade agreements as evidence of rising global confidence in India. Over the past couple of weeks alone, India has signed multiple pacts, including landmark agreements with European Union and the United States. On January 27th, India and the European Union jointly announced the conclusion of the India-EU Free Trade Agreement at the 16th India-EU Summit. The deal, covering 27 EU member states, marked a historic milestone in bilateral trade relations.
अनेक देशों के साथ आज भारत फ्यूचर रेडी ट्रेड डील्स कर रहा है। पिछले कुछ ही समय में दुनिया के महत्वपूर्ण 9 बड़े देशों के साथ 9 बड़े हमारे ट्रेड डील हुए हैं और उसमें मदर ऑफ ऑल डील एक साथ 27 देशों के साथ यूरोपियन यूनियन के साथ।
Since 2021, India has quietly rewritten its trade strategy. Once known for high tariffs and cautious market access, New Delhi is now positioning itself as a proactive deal maker, signing 9 major trade agreements across 6 global regions. The strategy aims to widen market access, reduce tariff barriers and insulate the Indian economy from geopolitical shocks. Among the most significant agreements in India-UK Free Trade Agreement signed in July 2025, which aims to double bilateral trade by 2030, the deal grants tariff-free access to 99% of Indian exports while sharply reducing British car tariffs in India. In December 2025, New Zealand granted 100% duty-free access to Indian goods across all tariff lines. India has also strengthened its footprint in the Gulf through comprehensive economic partnership agreement with the UAE and Oman, eliminating tariffs on nearly all traded goods. Beyond the Gulf, India signed its first such agreement in Africa with Mauritius in 2021 and expanded trade access through Australia-India ECTA in 2022, securing duty-free access for over 96% of Indian exports. Together, these agreements mark a strategic leap for India, cutting tariffs, strengthening supply chain integration, and reinforcing its position as a reliable global partner. The recent US deal helps ease immediate trade frictions by reducing American tariffs to 18%. It provides relief to India's labor-intensive export sector such as textiles, MSMEs, gems and jewelry, leather goods and marine products. It also opens pathways for access to advanced technologies and high-value investment. Now, despite tariff pressures under the Trump administration, India's exports to the United States rose 11.3% to $59 billion between April and November 2025. However, the agreement has also reignited debate over energy ties. President Trump claimed that India would stop buying Russian oil and instead increase purchases from US and potentially from Venezuela. Prime Minister Modi made no such commitment publicly. India's trade minister reiterated that oil sourcing decisions are driven purely by market considerations and energy security needs.
मैं स्पष्ट करना चाहता हूं, जैसा कि सरकार ने कई बार सार्वजनिक रूप से कहा है कि 140 करोड़ भारतीयों की ऊर्जा आवश्यकताओं की सुरक्षा सुनिश्चित करना सरकार की सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता है। वस्तुनिष्ठ बाजार स्थितियों और बदलते अंतर्राष्ट्रीय परिदृश्यों के अनुरूप ऊर्जा स्रोतों में विविधता लाना हमारी इस कार्यनीति का मूल आधार है।
India currently sources crude oil from nearly 40 countries, compared with 27 a few years ago. While Russia remains a key supplier, its share has declined as price discounts narrowed. India has increased imports from the US, Brazil, Guyana and West Africa. The Ministry of External Affairs emphasized that ensuring energy security for India's 1.4 billion people remains the government's top priority.
The government has stated publicly on several occasions, including me here, that ensuring the energy security of 1.4 billion Indians is the supreme priority of the government. Diversifying our energy sourcing in keeping with objective market conditions and evolving international dynamics is at the core of our strategy to ensure this. All of India's decisions are taken and will be taken with this in mind. Consistent with our approach to energy security, India remains open to exploring the commercial merits of any crude supply options, including from Venezuela.
Neither New Delhi nor Moscow has confirmed any decision to halt Russian oil purchases. The Kremlin has stated it has received no such indication from India. India's oil import diversification aligns with its long-term security strategy. According to India Energy Outlook 2021, India is the world's third largest crude oil importer and remains vulnerable to geopolitical supply disruptions. In addition, an International Energy Agency report notes that India is expected to see the largest increase in energy demand of any country, driven by its expanding economy, growing population, urbanization and industrialization. The government's push to widen supplier bases is aimed at reducing price shocks and safeguarding domestic fuel affordability. Welcoming the India-US trade deal, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar met with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in Washington. Both sides agreed to formalize cooperation on critical minerals and take forward their economic partnership. He said trade deal will open up new phase in the relations. The talks between both the leaders underscored Washington's push to stabilize and deepen ties with New Delhi at a time of global economic and geopolitical churn. The India-US trade deal marks a significant development in bilateral economic relations between the world's oldest and the largest democracies. By reducing US tariffs to 18% and committing to progressive liberalization of trade barriers, both nations have demonstrated pragmatic leadership, and a commitment to rules-based economic engagement. It represents a strategic bet on deeper economic interdependence, supply chain resilience, and shared prosperity. As the details are being made public and implementation begins, the true test will lie in ensuring that the deal delivers benefits to businesses, workers, and countries while respecting each nation's core interests and strategic autonomy. Fighting between Baloch Liberation Army and Pakistani forces continues. The BLA has launched the second phase of Operation Harof across multiple districts in Balochistan. After coordinated high-intensity attacks, the spotlight has shifted to two women, Asifa Mengal and Hawa Baloch. For decades, Baloch women were seen as mourners waiting for missing sons, brothers and husbands. Now they are at the heart of insurgency and of a new public narrative. The BLA has elevated them as symbols of resistance. Their rise signals a shift. Attacks are no longer just about force. They are about identity, visibility and messaging. Aman Kumar Himanshu has more on this.
In Balochistan, women bury the dead. They wait for sons who never return. They protest silently for husbands who vanish. They stand outside military camps, clutching photographs. For decades, they have waited for answers that never arrive. But this time, the women were not waiting. They were part of the attack. Last week, Balochistan witnessed one of the most coordinated military offensives in recent years. Fighters belonging to the Balochistan Liberation Army carried out attacks across at least 12 locations, targeting security forces, police posts and civilian infrastructure. At least 50 security personnel and civilians were dead, in what the group described as a message to the Pakistani state. What drew the most attention was not the scale of the violence, but the faces behind it. Soon after the attacks, the Balochistan Liberation Army released images of two of the attackers. Both were women, Asifa Mengal and Hawa Baloch. They carried out the attacks on symbols of Pakistan's authority in the restive province. In a video footage, the attacker, Hawa Baloch, was seen firing at Pakistani security forces during Phase 2 of the BLA's Operation Harof at the Gwadar front. BLA said that Hawa Baloch fought selflessly, shoulder to shoulder with fellow Fidain, a term the group uses to refer to suicide attackers. In a video, Hawa Baloch addressed the camera directly, urging the Baloch nation to rise. She said, "There is no other way left for the Baloch people." Alongside Hawa Baloch, Asifa Mengal, a 24-year-old, joined the BLA's elite Majid Brigade after her 21st birthday, volunteering last year for a suicide mission. The group asserted that she played a crucial role in an attack on the Inter-Services Intelligence Facility in Nushki. For decades, armed resistance in Balochistan followed traditional lines, with men fighting and women left to mourn and protest. That order has broken down under the weight of enforced disappearances, repeated military operations, and the erosion of tribal structures. As men were killed, jailed, or even went missing, women stepped into the public space, first as protesters and now in some cases as fighters. Analysts argue that this shift reflects changing times as much as changing tactics. Increased access to education, social media and political awareness has transformed how Baloch women understand both resistance and agency. What began as a silent protest gradually evolved into a more confrontational challenge to the state's authority.
Now it has evolved, from a tribal insurgent struggle to a middle-class urban movement, which has seen inclusion of women as well. These insurgents, the young generation belongs to Gen Z, Gen Alpha. They are social media savvy. They have crafted a narrative. They believe in it.
This is not the first time that women fighters of Balochistan Liberation Army have come into focus. In recent years, women from Baloch ethnic minority have increasingly appeared in suicide attacks, unsettling Pakistan's security establishment. In April 2022, Shari Baloch, a 30-year-old mother of two with a master's degree, detonated herself outside the university in Karachi. The attack killed 3 Chinese nationals and a Pakistani driver. A year later, in June 2023, a second attack took place. Sumaya Baloch carried out a suicide attack on a military convoy in Turbat. Prominent activist Dr. Maharang Baloch co-founded the Baloch Yakheti Committee following a series of abuses against her family and the wider Baloch community. She entered the Baloch rights movement after her father was abducted in 2007 and again in 2009, allegedly by Pakistani security forces. Last year, Maharang was detained by Pakistani authorities during a sit-in in Quetta. Since then, her family's access has been restricted, despite calls for her release from human rights groups and fighters including Amnesty International, Malala Yousafzai and UN experts. She remains in detention under harsh conditions. Pakistan has responded to the Baloch resistance with an iron fist, making dissent increasingly rare. Enforced disappearances of activists have become commonplace. The disappearance and arrests are part of a broader campaign of repression. The state is attempting to criminalize peaceful resistance by labeling activists as terrorists and linking them to militant groups without evidence. This tactic is not new. The federal government has engaged in similar repressive actions against the ethnic groups in Pakistan, including Sindhis, Pashtuns, and Kashmiris. However, the case of Baloch is particularly severe because Balochistan is heavily militarized with limited media access and international oversight. Balochistan is the largest and the most resource-rich province in Pakistan. It is also the poorest. For decades, the Pakistani state has treated the province as a colony, exploiting its resources while suppressing its people. To enforce its control, the government set up police and military bases to kidnap and even kill dissidents. It has long witnessed an insurgency led by separatist groups demanding greater autonomy or independence. The BLA is among the most prominent of these groups and is designated a terrorist organization by Pakistan and several other countries. Despite repeated military crackdowns, the BLA continues to receive notable civilian support. Baloch women have become the state's newest targets, but they are refusing to be silenced. Their movement has grown from dozens to thousands, spreading from Balochistan to cities like Karachi and Islamabad. They are demanding justice for their families, dignity and rights for the Baloch people, and a future where speaking out is not punished and no community is erased. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
The most prominent son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, has been shot dead in the northwestern city of Zintan in Libya. While Saif al-Islam is well known in the North African country, especially for his role in shaping policy during his father's rule, his public profile had receded in recent years. In 2015, a Libyan court passed a death sentence in absentia on Saif al-Islam for suppressing peaceful protest. His father, Muammar Gaddafi, was toppled in NATO-backed mass uprising in 2011. Part of the Arab Spring, the country has since plunged into chaos. Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, is dead. 53-year-old Saif, who was once widely seen as his father's heir apparent, was shot dead on Tuesday, February 3rd, during a direct confrontation with 4 unknown gunmen who broke into his home in the city of Zintan. Sources inform that attackers shot Saif al-Islam in the garden of his residence before fleeing the scene. A probe has been launched into the killing. On Friday, Libyans took part in a funeral for Saif al-Islam Gaddafi in the city of Bani Walid.
The funeral was really grand and big, suitable for the status of this man who exerted big efforts for the sake of Libya, reconciliation, and the Libyan people.
Despite holding no official position, Saif al-Islam was once seen as the most powerful figure in the North African country after his father, Muammar Gaddafi.
Not anymore. Not anymore. Because the Libyan people, they woke up and now they realize the danger around them. So now we are more united, we are more optimistic, and we are much stronger. So we are very optimistic.
Saif was once a prominent figure in Libya, particularly for his influence on policy making prior to 2011. His reform efforts briefly improved ties with the West. However, his public image had largely declined in recent years. In 2015, a Libyan court passed a death sentence in absentia on Saif al-Islam for suppressing peaceful protests. He had been charged by the International Criminal Court for alleged crimes against humanity. In 2021, Saif al-Islam registered as a presidential candidate for a vote that eventually collapsed amid a political deadlock. Saif al-Islam was a deeply polarizing figure and a central impediment to any consensual presidential contest, as his possible return to power was unacceptable to many factions that had fought the former regime. His assassination removes a major source of uncertainty from future electoral arrangements and is likely to alter the calculations of tribes and former regime loyalists who had kept lines open to him as a bargaining chip. With his death, the pathway has effectively closed. For many loyalists of the old order, Saif had been the only credible vehicle for Gaddafi-era revival, combining family name with political experience, tribal and patronage networks, and a declared project to re-enter national politics. Saif al-Islam's killing evoked mixed reactions in Libya and the neighborhood. The UN-recognized government of national unity in Tripoli condemned the killing as a threat to reconciliation efforts. Celebrations erupted in some areas, reflecting anti-Gaddafi sentiment, while pro-Gaddafi groups mourned him as a martyr. The African Union expressed deep concern, urging a thorough investigation to avoid undermining political transition. Fate of Muammar Gaddafi's other sons illustrate how sharply the family's fortunes deteriorated since 2011. Muttasim Gaddafi, the former national security advisor, was captured and killed by rebel forces in 2011, the same day as his father. Khamis Gaddafi, a military commander who led the elite Khamis Brigade, was reportedly killed in combat near Tripoli in August of 2011. Saif al-Arab Gaddafi, the most low-profile son, was killed by a NATO airstrike on his residence in Tripoli in April 2011. Libya is a mostly desert and oil-rich country in northern Africa. It gained independence in 1951, soon after oil was discovered, and earned the country immense wealth. Muammar Gaddafi seized power in 1969. Libya's turmoil stems from the 2011 NATO-backed uprising that ousted Gaddafi after 42 years of authoritarian rule with charges of human rights violations. He was captured and killed by the rebels in Sirte. What began as pro-democracy protest or the Arab Spring descended into a civil war, leaving a power vacuum filled by militias, tribes, and foreign powers. Today, Libya operates with parallel administrations, institutions, and security forces. Presidential and parliamentary elections are scheduled later in 2026, but security concerns and constitutional deadlocks continue to threaten stability. And that brings us to the close of this edition of Voice of the Global South. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.